What's your deep web story? Story 1. Back when internet relay chat was on its way out and peer-to-peer was in its infancy, I tried to download The Sims via private file transfer protocol. The guy I downloaded it from found a Trojan on my computer and walked me through how to remove it. I would take a bullet for that dude. Story 2. I found a guy selling carrots. It wasn't code for anything. He was literally just selling carrots for Bitcoin. 10 out of 10, I would visit again. Story 3. I first learned about the deep web back in grade 10 when this really strange, troubled kid in my grade was going on about it. We sat together in English and had a new teacher who wasn't quite good and didn't really know how to control the class, so for the last 20 minutes or so, she would just let us do whatever. Everyone around this kid's desk, let's call him Eli, would crowd around his computer and watch him monkey around on Silk Road and other weird sites he found. No CP or anything, but illegal substances, hitmen, and weird stuff in general. I was kind of sketched out by it, so I tried to avoid looking at it all, but I listened and it was pretty screwed up. Eventually, Eli decided to order illegal substances for some site. This was high school, so we all lived at home, so he figured he'd order DMT to his cottage, go up for a weekend, and pick it up to hide in his closet. So he typed in his address for some guy, worked out the details, and waited. He went up to his cottage the next weekend, and we all waited for his return for the stories. Eli got back, and we all ran up to him to ask if it worked. He said it didn't, and he was really pissed since he had already paid the guy. He complained to whoever was selling him the illegal substance, and the guy was really understanding and said he'd send an even bigger package to his cottage. Eli went up the next weekend, still nothing. The guy was very apologetic and said he'd send one more, and still nothing. Eli gave up and figured it was just a guy trying to make a quick buck. He gave up on the deep web, and that was that. Months later, he goes up to his cottage with his family and has a big dinner party with a whole complex of cottages. He's schmoozing around and overhears these elderly people talking about going to the cops. He asks why, and they tell him they've been consistently getting shipments of illegal substances every week. Eli had typed in the wrong address, and the guy he was talking to had been sending more and more to the wrong people each week because he just felt so bad. He was so sketched out that he quit everything and is now doing quite well for himself. I'm proud of him. Story 4. This was before Google, and most web pages were basic HTML with JavaScript. CSS was hardly used, and only discussion boards and some banking sites had mature front-end and back-end combinations. It was the early days of the internet. This is a real deep web story, not just one about illicit activities online. While browsing random blogs, GeoCities sites, and similar pages, I stumbled upon an odd page. It seemed like random thoughts from different people, but it was very well designed for the time. The messages were cryptic, like several people passing secret notes. As I went through the page's source, I found various IP addresses hidden in the comments of a JavaScript. I gathered all the IPs in a text file and started enumerating. Most of them were routers with banner messages I could telnet to. Almost all were at universities, and the default Cisco credentials from back in the day worked on most of them. But I didn't poke around. Some IPs were web servers with little to nothing on them. Most were Apache on Linux or some BSD, and there was at least one IISS server I could recall. Finally, I found a web server with a large directory of HTML files and TIFF images, and a few smaller subdirectories containing the same. An NS lookup revealed no reverse records for the IP, and a visual route traced it as far as Colorado. The HTML files appeared to be records that a psychologist or similar mental health professional would keep. The images were of faxes, apparently of both a military and medical nature. As I browsed from a subdirectory back to the parent, a new HTML file appeared at the top, named something like 1-hello-there.html. The timestamp was from right that minute. I opened it, and in plain text was a message, "We see you." No quotes, all lowercase, and about 15 seconds later, the server dropped. Story 5. I went on the dark web out of curiosity with a good friend. We downloaded Tor on my computer and went to the hidden wiki. My friend clicked on a random link, and we landed on a website's landing or homepage with images I'd rather not discuss. We closed the browser, uninstalled Tor, and changed my IP address. The end. Story 6. This is from way back when Silk Road was still going strong. I was looking for a certain substance but couldn't find it in my part of the world for a decent price. I posted my request on the forum, and after a few days, someone messaged me with an offer. For some reason, I accepted it and sent him around $200. Of course, I got scammed. I didn't think much of it, but posted a warning to others about this guy, saying he scammed me out of $200. A few days later, I got a message in my inbox saying something like this: "Hey, I'm a vendor and this guy tried to scam me too. He just ordered an ounce of MDMA for me and an ounce of sweet sugar crystals is on the way to his mailbox. Please send me your BTC address and I will send you the $200 he scammed you out of." The next day, I had $200 back and a deep respect for the dark web community. Story 7. Honestly, it's not as exciting as a lot of people make it out to be. There are plenty of quote-unquote hitmen, but I am guessing 90% of them are cops or scams. If you are looking to get arrested, there are CP links everywhere. They are a lot easier to find than I had expected, but I never actually looked at them. There are plenty of illegal substances and some guns. There's plenty of snuff, but you can find stuff on Reddit, so it's not anything special. Overall, I wasn't looking to get arrested, so I didn't do anything besides browse the hidden wiki. Fun story, I used Tor in middle school to get past the websites that were blocked so I could play Congregate. You had to enable Flash for it to work because obviously you needed to play Flash games, but you aren't supposed to enable Flash on Tor because it allows you to be traced. I didn't really care though because I was only using it for Congregate. Story 8. Okay, so this is probably either one of the stupidest decisions of my life or it may be just the only redeeming thing I have ever done. So you all know about Silk Road, the defunct online you-know-what market that was shut down in October of 2013. The man sentenced to life for running it, Ross Ulbricht, is not the only guy who ran it. In fact, I don't think he was too involved at all. I have since moved and the person I am about to talk about has gone ghost as well, so here it goes. I spent a few months dating this guy, considerably older, who was probably running the website for 80% of the time. He was always online, logged in, and many times in front of me, he not only used the Dread Pirate Roberts account, but also chatted with who I now believe was the Ulbricht boy. My former significant other often joked that this kid was essentially his robot and worshipped him. I know he probably had over 2,500 bitcoins at one point. I saw other things that he is stupid for flaunting, such as his conversations that he would decrypt and save to USB drives as insurance, his words, of him discussing things with the police. Either he was an informant or he had them working for him. I think both I knew for a period of about 8 or 9 months that Ulbricht had not logged into the site portal because my ex became paranoid that the guy might have been arrested, killed, or turned informant. He pops back up and they start chatting like old buddies. Supposedly, he was hanging out with family and having personal problems. I don't know the specifics and have never told a soul. When they arrested this boy, my ex took off. He said he was going to visit his parents and lay low for a bit and then just abruptly vanished. I did see him as the last online ex hours ago on WhatsApp here and there, so thankfully he's not dead or in jail, I think. For those who might think I could be getting him into trouble and that I'm being a vengeful rat, no, I ain't. He's not a US citizen and is most likely not in the US. Story 9. I decided to check out one of the successor sites soon after the Silk Road was busted. They had 2 or 3 bad-looking guns for several $1,000s apiece, some and a metric ton of weird research substances. I was hoping to see things I might recognize, like or heroin or LSD, but instead I got random mixes of letters and numbers and various pills or powders. It was a lot less exciting than I thought it would be. Story 10. Way back in the day, beyond the terms of a statute of limitations, you used to be able to use Kazaa or LimeWire and stuff to look at people's entire computers since they were stupid and set the entire computer to share. I used to send out an email a day to random people, pointing out that the pictures of them hooking up with their husband, wife, girlfriend, etc., and their social security number were freely available, along with instructions on how to install Kazaa and LimeWire. Story 11. I found someone selling a wish pill online. Basically, you're supposed to take the pill, make a wish, and it's supposed to make it come true. It just made me laugh how much they were selling it to make it off as something real. They made up fake elements that were supposedly found in nature and showed videos of them making the pill, which was really just a bunch of blue lights being flashed at the screen. They were selling it for $100 a pill. The sad thing is there were probably a few idiots who actually bought it. Story 12. The majority of these stories will all be the same because they all come from people who downloaded Tor and went exploring or browsing. The vast majority have found the hidden wiki and clicked on some links. There's a fundamental misunderstanding here of what the dark web is designed to do. Those links from the hidden wiki and other point-and-click entry sites are designed to be found. The most obvious are the darknet markets. They want customers. They put their URLs out there. They list themselves on the wiki and other Tor directories. They don't want the sites to be hidden, just the owners/servers. If you were to go to one of the directories that crawls and links all the live URLs it can find, most of them would be listed as unknown. Some will take you to a site you can look at anyway, but a lot of them will take you to a page where it simply asks for your credentials before you can go any further. There's nothing else. There is no link to register, no FAQ, and no indication of what is behind that password login. The whole idea of Tor's hidden services is that they are hidden from anybody who doesn't have the credentials to get into them. You have to get them some other way. There are no referral links being spammed on Reddit, the Intel Exchange, or general access forums. Some of these sites may be safe havens for dissidents to discuss stuff, and some of them might be the dark, spooky places of the no-sleep stories. But chances are, none of us will ever know what is behind 99% of them. Story 13. I was really into Bitcoin when the Silk Road scandal happened and I started buying certain merchandise online. The first time, I was very nervous about the potential of getting caught, so I decided to have the first product sent to my office. I addressed it generically to the IT department, and my boss, who's a good friend, was going to keep an eye out for me. I figured this would give me enough deniability if it was intercepted. Now, things went very wrong. Instead of the package going to my boss, it went to his boss. Now, the company I worked for at the time was a large behemoth with access to credit information on just about everyone in the US. Every employee was tested and we had random tests, and this could have been a huge issue. So I was at lunch when the package was delivered and opened. I was actually on my way back when I got a call from a project manager. Hey, so did you have anything sent to the office? No, nothing. Why? Duh, I'm not going to admit to this. Anything strange sent here? Nope. Well, the boss's boss just received a package and it contains marijuana. Well, I had enough deniability that while plenty of people suspected me, I got off. I learned something about my boss that day. He didn't tell anyone upstream about it, and rumor has it that he took it home and smoked it. Story 14. Not me, but my dad. I don't know if it's quite the dark web, but it is dark, and it was on the web. My dad works in what's called the name generation. Basically, he gets hired by recruiters on a project-by-project basis to call into companies with a secretive mid-high chain of command, typically with salaries ranging from $250,000 and up as a fake person, so that they reveal the entire inner workings of the company. Can't reveal what he says, trade secret. This is for stealing away employees, general knowledge, or God knows what. This entails a lot of research to get to know the industry, and it's usually something like investment bankers, video game developers, or insurance HRs. So one day, an unnamed client asked my dad to find out the command for the hired guns group that did work in Iraq and Afghanistan for the US during the recent wars. It was unusual, but it was right in the middle of the Great Recession, and work was, well, work. So he took it and got pulled into a lot of weird places, phone calls to stations in Afghanistan to talk with army leaders, strange websites, and worse. He even landed on a terrorist website written largely in Arabic that was a call to arms and jihad. All this searching for what was essentially military secrets coupled with a few clicks on some radicalized Islam sites eventually led to a single text message popping up on his screen. It said, "Oh, so this is what you do in your spare time." Now, no one else was home, and he was sitting at his desk as the message popped up. Needless to say, he freaked out, slammed his laptop shut, and called me as a more tech-savvy person to ask what happened. I was baffled. He hasn't taken a military-industrial complex job since. Story 15. While I never personally received anything from any deep web-affiliated salespeople, I live with a roommate who constantly receives strange brochures. At first, we received brochures for things like cruise lines, which I wrote off as junk mail. But they came so frequently and started getting stranger, like brochures for Christian mingle, petting zoos, and all kinds of services. I felt like someone was gaslighting me, but I never said anything, and the brochures would disappear as quickly as they came. One day, I walked in and my roommate was delicately cutting into a brochure and pulling out a small baggie of powder. The guy had hooked up with the most low-key dealer I'd ever seen. Story 16. When I was a freshman in high school, my best friend and I were very into the whole deep web thing. We had Tor and would exchange onion ports that we had discovered and explore them together. We saw some weird stuff. Right off the bat, we found a site for a professional hitman, which we decided was definitely run by the FBI. We discovered a series of Chans, or deep web 4chan clones. Some of these were very weird, and some what we saw was definitely illegal. We were fascinated with those in particular because, of course, we were both ridiculous at the time. There were lots of disturbing and violent videos, lots of gore, and sometimes the two overlapped. We tended to stay away from that stuff. It was a pretty big buzzkill. Finding the Silk Road was cool, even though we never bought anything. Probably the weirdest stuff I ever found were the personal ads. Now, these were bulletin boards where people would just ask to do the most deviant, incomprehensible things to someone or vice versa. I think about the Craigslist when I remember those things and wonder how many of those people actually end up acting out those fantasies. Story 17. In comp sci, we often got bored and around. One day, we stumbled upon the deep web. The most disturbing site we found was a comprehensive guide for cooking women. We're not talking about a short joke here. This page had information on what body types to use for specific cuts, how to prepare these cuts, and how to cook the girl so she lives as long as possible. It horrifies me that people way worse than the freaks on Criminal Minds exist. Story 18. I found out about the deep web when Silk Road got shut down, so I decided to check it out and found Agora. I spent a lot of time setting up an account and finally deciding to buy something, a gram of MDMA, and it all worked perfectly. Then I started buying more for myself and my friends, and the next thing I knew, I was ordering ounces of MDMA at a time, thousands of LSD tabs, and pretty much every illegal substance you can think of, plus a bunch you've never heard of. I was moving all the stuff faster than I could buy it, like really stupidly, might I add. I ended up realizing that this was going to end either with me quitting or with me ending up behind bars, so I quit while I was ahead. I ended up with over $10,000 in profit and a nice little stash for myself. I took a trip to Europe and never touched the deep web again. I had about 1,000 empty gel capsules left over, so I filled a bunch of them up with glitter and gave them away so people could enjoy having their capsules covered in glitter. Story 19. As a regular user of the deep web, I remember one of my early experiences when I found a trustworthy-looking marketplace with the product I was looking for, good sellers, and other favorable features. I spent some time browsing it, and just as I was about to deposit my Bitcoin and make a purchase, my laptop suddenly shut down and wouldn't turn back on. My heart sank, and I was convinced that I had been hacked by the NSA or some other entity. I imagine agents on their way to my house to seize all my belongings and throw me in jail where I would be at risk of being assaulted. My heart rate soared to 300 BPM, and I tried to calm myself down while deciding whether to dispose of everything immediately. Then I realized that my laptop wasn't even plugged in, and once I plugged it in and waited a few minutes, it turned back on. The battery had simply run out, and I felt like a complete idiot.